All right. So last week I wasn't able to do a video, but this week I'm back with the vengeance. Back with the prison story, and I got to give a warning for graphic violence. There's an assault involving a deadly weapon. And real quick, everybody, don't forget to hit like. You can hit like as soon as you click on the video. You don't have to wait till the end. If you don't like it, you can take that like back and hit the thumbs down. Doesn't really matter. Subscribe and also comment, even if it's just one word, 2 words. Smiley face, middle finger. It don't matter. Them comments will help my channel grow too. So anyway, like I said in the title and description, the story is very graphic, very violent, and 100% true. I'm telling the story because I consider it educational to young people out there, who are overly cocky, like to run that mouth, And this is just an extreme example of what could happen if you're not respectful and don't think about consequences. So this is another one of my experiences from SMU 1, Supermax Arizona DOC. This happened like 94, 95. This is one of the most horrible things that I actually witnessed happen to a CO while I was there. I mean, I didn't see the whole thing. I seen about maybe from the middle, So I responded to it. So I dealt with it, dealt with the aftermath, and dealt with the offending inmate along with other COs. I'll start out by explaining that all inmates at SMU 1 were level 5 offenders, like I said in a previous video. The first number being the level of their crime, which is level 5, the most serious. The second number being the level of their behavior while incarcerated, which for the most of them was also a 5, meaning that they had either seriously assaulted or killed another inmate or staff while incarcerated. All inmates there, understandably, were considered extremely dangerous, a serious threat to staff and other inmates. So anytime these inmates left their cell for any reason whatsoever, whether it was to go to medical, see their lawyer, or for just a regular visit, they were escorted by 2 COs at all times. And certain individuals had to also be escorted by a sergeant or above, and also be recorded on camera while being escorted. These are for inmates that were like extremely assaultive or just extremely unpredictable, Because during this time, there was no cameras in the prison. And I know a lot of younger people might be shocked by this because, these days they're used to cameras being everywhere, especially in prisons. But like I said, this was like the mid-90s, so cameras being everywhere wasn't super common yet. So the story goes like this. There was a CO from Cali. He was a young Chicano, early 20s, from LA, to be exact. We'll call him MM. Those are his initials, like Eminem. This CO was also a former Marine. All the CO ever talked about was LA this, LA that, and also, Marines are the baddest and toughest, etc. And, let me make this clear. I got nothing against LA, and I have nothing against Marines. I got a couple of friends that are Marines, and, I'm also ex-military. I was in the Army, to be exact. And I understand Marines are hardcore and go through, some of the toughest training. And a lot of times they're the first to go into combat, but also just from working with some Marines and from being on the same base with Marines when I was going through my Army training, I found out, Marines can be super hard-headed, and, they kind of got like this Terminator mentality, they think they're indestructible. And, I don't care how tough or how intense you think you are, you won't survive many bullets and you can still get an ass beating, So I'm just saying I understand why they have to be, why they have to have that mentality, because they got to be ready for, to go into combat and all that. But anyway, this particular former Marine had an extra heavy dose of that I'm indestructible Terminator attitude. And, probably because he was from LA on top of that. So it added a little bit extra of that, on top of it. He butted heads with pretty much all the other COs, because they would tell him to shut up already about LA. You're not a gangster, you're a CO. And they would tell him, shut up about the Marines too. You're not in the Marines no more, But, he would always throw that Marines for life, all that out there. So I never really got into it with him. We talked a little, and I was just like, bro, I know LA is the shit, It's where everything started, everything starts, But I told him Phoenix, Mesa, and Chandler AZ get down too, bro. There ain't no punks over here, So, and I told him anyway, all the COs, man, we got to have each other's backs in here, because it's dangerous as hell to be, rolling solo. Like, you don't need no backup. And, but he was super hard headed. And he was like, yo, whatever, bro. I don't need nobody telling me nothing. He was like, basically like, unless you got stripes on your shoulders, he was like, I ain't trying to hear it. Sorry about that background noise. It's like real life, environment or whatever. But, so anyways, he wasn't trying to hear it unless it was coming from a supervisor, So like with any other CO working at a prison or jail, especially at that level, inmates pretty much build up detailed files on every CO. And I don't mean like paper files, I just mean they analyze and pay attention to every little thing you do, and they share information with each other about every CO, every staff, everybody, counselors, nurses, whatever. So they know if one CO is erratic or inconsistent. They know if another CO is scared and easily compromised. That also falls in line with COs that want to be down so bad and be cool with inmates. They know they can compromise those easily, They also know if a CO is super cocky or has anger issues and can be easily set off. They will push that CO's buttons and say certain things to trigger them. So, as you can imagine, word got around between all the inmates and convicts that COMM was super cocky and was always bringing up, he was from LA and a Marine. He started to get in a lot of verbal altercations with inmates, talking crap to him, trying to trigger him, just telling him like, you're not an inmate, you're not a gangster. Stop talking about LA all the time and start acting like a freaking cop, It was actually kind of funny that they were telling that, but that's what they called us, most times they didn't call us COs, they called us cops, because to them, we were just a cop inside the prison, which, in my opinion is even more dangerous for us because we don't get to carry a gun like street cops. All we had was like a radio and pepper spray. And a lot of times they carried weapons. They had homemade knives and, like a lock and a sock. Anything they could get their hands on, they would use as a weapon, Even handcuffs, as I'm going to talk about later in the story. So it all came down to one day he got called to pick up an inmate from a lawyer visit. And this particular day, we were very short-staffed, more than usual. Inmates, they like these days to do bad stuff because they know there's not a lot of staff that can respond to it, So when MM showed up at visitation to pick up this particular inmate, the inmate saw an opportunity. This inmate was a youngster, early 20s, and was, he was a hardcore skinhead. He was tattooed head to toe with Nazi, iron eagles, swastikas, lightning bolts, etc. He was in really good shape too. Did nothing but work out like most of them. And also, like a lot of them, practice ways to assault staff even when, restraints are on. Or practice how to get out of restraints and how to use those restraints as weapons. So the inmate, so the minute MM began to escort the inmate back to his housing unit, the shit talking began, you know. So he basically was telling MM, you know, so I hear you this badass Marine, don't look like shit to me, you know. And he was telling him stuff like, you know, I hear you're always talking about LA and stuff like you're an inmate or like you're a gangster or some shit. You know, and he was like, these other cops here don't even like you, man, because, you know, you be talking all that stupid mess. And MM was, you know, he was getting mad. So he was talking shit back to the inmate too, you know. As was commented on the report later that, you know, we got to see, you know, by other officers who were either going by escorting other inmates or, you know, that he just passed by while he was taking the inmate back to his housing unit. So he was calling the inmate, you know, like a stupid little Nazi punk and, you know, telling him to shut the fuck up, shut his mouth, or he was going to shut it for him, you know. So, of course, you know, that skinhead told him, you know, well, let's see what's up then, Marine. Take these fucking cuffs off and we'll see what's up, you know. So basically, MM, being the cocky young dude he was, took him up on it, you know. He told him, wait till we get back to your housing unit. You know, I'm going to take these restraints off and beat your punk ass, you know. So, you know, a lot of the verbal altercation is pretty much was what was reported by the inmate, you know, his version of it. So, you know, maybe it might not be 100% accurate. You know, he might have lied about some shit or whatever, but that's pretty much, you know, what the inmate has said, most of this next part. So after that, so the next part was observed by the CO in the control tower above the ground floor, you know, because it's 2 floors, the ground floor where all the inmates are at, and then the top floor is just the control units. You know, obviously no inmates are allowed up there. So I have to describe the layout of the housing unit so you can get an understanding of what it looked like. The ground floor looks like this. You know, to enter the unit, there's a big solid steel door with a small plexiglass window that opens up into a walkway that's shaped like a horseshoe. Surrounding this horseshoe are the 6 pods the inmates live in. Each pod has a metal see-through door. It's like metal with holes in it, you know, like a grid in it so you can see through it. 2 floors in each pod, 4 cells on each floor, and a shower at the end of the tier or the end of the pod, you know. Then another solid steel door on the ground floor at the end of the pod for an enclosed rec pen. Above the horseshoe walkway, you can see a control officer up above in the control tower. You know, and he's divided by plexiglass and steel bars, you know, to keep the inmates from reaching the controls in case of a riot, you know, so they can't let all their homies out, you know. So this officer in the control tower, you know, he watched them walk into the horseshoe and could immediately hear them, you know, talking shit to each other. So he got on the intercom and he asked COMM, you know, he was like, hey, you know, what's up, man? Is everything cool? And, you know, MM yelled back, yeah, mind your fucking business, you know? And then he was like, you know, what's going on, man? Do you need me to call some backup? And he just shook his head, you know, and like kind of put his hand up, you know. So he then proceeded to put the inmate against the wall instead of taking him through the open door to his pod. He then yelled something at the inmate and started to undo one of his cuffs. So the control officer yelled at him again on the intercom, yo, man, what the fuck are you doing? And he yelled back, shut the fuck up, mind your fucking business, I got this. You know, so I'm going to try to explain this next part in detail as well as I can, you know, because there is an actual technique to what the inmate did. You know, so like inmates used to practice this. So like, you know, say like, so the inmate was handcuffed behind his back. So as soon as, you know, he undid the left handcuff, that was his first mistake, you know, because as soon as he undid the left handcuff, the inmate kind of pulled away from him and, you know, kind of like pulled the handcuff and he swung. I don't know if he used 2 hands to do it or if he just swung it, but he put the other open cuff over his hand like a brass knuckle and he spun around and caught MM like on the side of the head right here. So he got a full swing with that. Basically, it's a brass knuckle. So, this all happened in a split second. The inmate spun around, caught him on the side of the head. He immediately went down. The inmate jumped on his chest and began pounding the left side of his face. He pretty much, that's the only place he hit him. He just kept hitting him in the same spot. He knew what he was doing. He was trying to do maximum damage. So, the control officer said he probably went unconscious after about the second or third hit. He just went limp. He immediately got on the radio and started yelling frantically, officer being assaulted, 2 Baker Charlie, Horseshoe. You call it activating IMS. I don't remember what it stands for, like something emergency, something. But anyway, I was on a response team that day. There was only like 4 of us. There's supposed to be 5, but we were so short-staffed. And, I was on response team A. And then there was another backup response team of another 3. I think there was only 3 COs on the backup response team. So myself and another CO immediately began to run to that unit when we arrived. We arrived almost simultaneously as 2 other COs. We entered the Horseshoe, and we saw the inmate still pounding MM's face, and there was blood everywhere, like just splattered all over the floor and, some on the wall. His face was a bloody mess, As soon as the inmate saw us coming, he threw his hands up in the air and he was like, "I'm done," And, some of you might not like this next part, but, because you might say like, it's not fair, four COs against 1 inmate, But hey, I got news for you, man. Ain't shit fair in prison, and that's coming from both sides. Goes both ways. If inmates get a chance, they'll jump a CO 10 on 1, 20 on 1. They don't give a fuck. And, same for inmates. If there's an inmate that's green lighted or, that they have an issue with, they'll jump him too, 10 on 1, 20 on 1, depends on what the beef is about, but I'm just saying, been there and seen it for myself, and luckily I've only had altercations with, inmates, one-on-one. I've never had to fight like, more than one, that's not good right there, because usually they're in better shape than you, and I was in pretty good shape at that time, but, anyway, so this dude, he had 2 hands free with a deadly weapon, which he had just used to pound homeboy's face into mush, so we jumped on him and attempted to resecure his free hands. He attempted to get free and became hostile. So we used extreme force, man, to subdue and resecure this hostile inmate. And, you can use your imagination or whatever, but hey, he ended up with a few bumps and bruises, maybe a split eye, he probably needed some stitches, But the worst thing that happened to him was he got about 5 years added on to his, his sentence for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and as for MM, we called for emergency medical. They rushed in. He was still unconscious and not moving. He was just kind of twitching and making some weird sounds. They did what they could then, quickly loaded him onto a gurney and, took him out of there. We were told he was, he was taking out the front exit of, main control out to the front parking lot to be air vac'd. We heard he needed, later on we heard he needed several surgeries, including plastic reconstructive surgery, and, he would never fully recover. He lost an eye. As a matter of fact, his left eye was ruptured and the eye socket and cheekbone was completely crushed. So I have no idea what homeboy ended up looking like afterwards, But, obviously I would hope he learned something from it, he had to have. I mean, there's no way he didn't, you know, and hopefully maybe he changed his ways a little bit. And, you know, I might have gotten a little bit emotional telling this story because it's a pretty traumatic thing to see, you know. But I hope I did a good job telling it, as accurate as possible, you know, and I hope that, you know, wherever homeboy's at, he's doing okay. You know, I hope he recovered as much as possible and is living his best life that he can, you know. But anyway, you know, that's the story. And like I said, you know, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and comment, please. And that's it for now. Your homie, Big Cisco. Peace.